This is one of the most powerful and well-known witches from the magical world of Harry Potter. Minerva Mcgonagall is not only an amazing duelist, taking on skilled opponents, but is also extremely clever and even became a registered Magus early in life. I am so excited for this one, guys, and I hope you are too, but before we begin on today's journey, please let me know in the comments where you are from. I am very curious to learn more about the people in my community, so please share it in the comments. With that said, grab your wands and let us dive into the magical tale of Professor Mcgonagall's life. In the heart of the Scottish Highlands, a tale of magic begins. Long before she became the formidable professor at the esteemed School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Hogwarts, her journey started as a young witch in a Muggle village. On the 4th of October 1935, Minerva Mcgonagall was born to a Muggle father and witch mother. Her father, Robert Mcgonagall, was a Muggle Presbyterian minister, and his wife, Isabel Ross, was a witch. Minerva was the couple's first child and was named after her mother's grandmother, who was a very powerful witch indeed. The family lived on the outskirts of Caithness in the Scottish Highlands, in a village where mostly Muggles lived. However, the gift of a child soon proved to be both a joy and a crisis. You see, Isabel had given up the use of her magic for her love of Robert and never told him about her nature, as she was afraid to mar the bliss of their wedding. However, the infant Minerva displayed small but noticeable signs of magic from her earliest hours. She couldn't suppress her talents even if she tried, and had no control over her magic, and thus inadvertently summoned toys that had been left on upper shelves to her cot. Furthermore, she made the family cat do her bidding, and her father's bagpipes play themselves, which would cause her to chuckle happily. Thus, Isabel often secluded herself with Minerva for days at a time. She knew she must confess to her husband about their daughter's wizarding abilities, and so she finally did, explaining everything to Robert and telling him that they were bound by the International Institute of Secrecy, and that they must conceal the truth about their magical abilities for their safety. Although Robert accepted the situation and the couple stayed together despite this shocking revelation, their trust in each other never truly was the same, which saddened their young but very perceptive daughter. Minerva later had two brothers, Malcolm and Robert Jr., who, like their sister, revealed magical ability at an early age. As a child, Minerva helped her mother conceal from her father the accidents and embarrassments the young witch's magic sometimes caused. She was very close to her Muggle father, whom in temperament she resembled more than her mother. Like many other witches and wizards, she received her acceptance letter to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry on her 11th birthday, which at the time was headed by Headmaster Armando Dibbet, a name you might recognize from my video about the origins of Voldemort. Nonetheless, Minerva had to acquire a wand at Ollivanders before journeying off to the magical school. The wand that ended up choosing her that day was 9.5 inches, made of fur, and possessed a dragon heartstring. Dragon heartstring wands are known for producing extremely powerful magic, but if you want more in-depth information about wands and how they choose their masters, check out my full video on this subject. Now free to be with her kind and to exercise her talents, Minerva saw how her mother sobbed that day, not only out of pride, but also out of envy, and so a whole new chapter of Minerva's life would soon unfold. When Minerva arrived at the sorting ceremony, she would again prove to be one of a kind. She became a hat stall, meaning a student whose sorting took more than 5 minutes due to the sorting hat being so in doubt as to where to place a student. In her case, the hat was in doubt of whether she should be placed in Ravenclaw for her cleverness or Gryffindor for her brave heart. However, 5.5 minutes later, the sorting hat yelled, "Gryffindor!" It might not sound very impressive, but a hat stall is an extremely rare occurrence and typically only happens once every 50 years. This would prove to be simply one among many great feats this witch would accomplish in her lifetime. Minerva was quickly recognized as the most outstanding student of her year, with a particular talent for transfiguration. Furthermore, she made it into the Gryffindor Quidditch team, although which position she played is unknown, though many believe that she was a chaser. Nonetheless, a dirty foul during an important match between Gryffindor and Slytherin that would decide the Quidditch Cup winner of that year would send Minerva to the hospital wing with a concussion, several broken ribs, and a lifelong desire to see Slytherin crushed on the Quidditch pitch. This happened during her final year, and therefore she did not manage to return to the pitch before graduating from Hogwarts and moving on with her life. Luckily for her, however, she was academically gifted as well, and by the end of her education at Hogwarts, she had achieved an impressive record. Top grades in her Owls and Newts, Prefect, Head Girl, and the winner of the Transfiguration Today's Most Promising Newcomer Award. Under guidance of her inspirational Transfiguration teacher, Albus Dumbledore, Minerva also managed to become a registered Animagus, and for a while everything seemed like sunshine and roses, but she too met adversity in her life. After graduating from Hogwarts, she got a job at the Ministry of Magic, but decided to go home to her parents for one last summer before moving to London and starting her new job at the Ministry of Magic. However, in the Muggle village in which she grew up, the 18-year-old promising witch would fall in love with the son of a local Muggle farmer named Dougal McGregor. He was handsome and they shared a sense of humor humor. Furthermore, they argued fiercely and saw mysterious depths in each other's souls. So Mcgonagall would for the first and only time it seemed lose her head. So when this young man asked her to be his wife, she said yes within a heartbeat. However, that night Mcgonagall would lie sleepless in her bed with the thoughts of engagement rioting in her head. Was she really about to commit the same mistake her mother made so many years ago and like her stow away her powers whom she was so very fond of? She knew that if she decided to stay, to marry Dougal, she would live unhappily with her wand locked away, shredding all of her ambitions. In the end, there was only one choice. So the very next morning, Minerva walked down to Dougal's house and told him that she had a change of heart and could not marry him. The thing that hurt her the most was that due to the International Statute of Secrecy, she could not explain to Dougal why she no longer could marry him, which devastated him completely. She would leave the village 3 days later for her new job at the ministry in London, and so a new chapter would begin. But these next few months would prove to be some of the most difficult in her life. You see, Mcgonagall did not much like her new home, nor did she particularly fancy her job, and she was especially unfond of a big portion of her co-workers, since many of them had an anti-Muggle biased approach to work and to life. Nonetheless, Minerva Mcgonagall quickly became one of the most efficient and gifted employees in the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Although she didn't fancy many of her co-workers, she did like her much older boss, Elphinstone. Actually, she liked him a lot, and he fancied her too. 2 years later, she would be offered a big promotion, but she did not want it. She missed the smaller village which she once called home, but there was nothing left for her there. Instead, she wrote a letter to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, hoping that she could get a teacher's position at the school. An owl returned within a few hours from Albus Dumbledore with a letter offering her the position as Transfiguration Professor. She too did excessively well at this job and impressed Albus himself, although he would one day find her crying in her classroom, and the conversation between Dumbledore and Mcgonagall that evening would create a unique and strong bond of friendship between them both. Mcgonagall had learned that her ex-fiancé had married another farmer's daughter back in the small village, and that was why she was crying. She decided to share her whole life story with Dumbledore, and he would sit there calmly listening, nodding and acknowledging her troubled mind, and so he decided to share a piece of his own family history. This exchange of heartfelt life stories and memories planted the roots of their long and dear friendship. And here is a fun story from one of her first years as teacher. I personally found this story hilarious, and I think you will too. Obviously, Mcgonagall was the teacher for Newt Scamander, whom we got introduced to in the Fantastic Beasts movies. However, we also get introduced to Leta Lestrange, who was somewhat of a troublemaker. One day, Leta sealed shut the mouth of a fellow student because she had spoken ill of her behind her back. And so, Mcgonagall had to come to aid and fix the situation, but Leta ran from her, and Mcgonagall was forced to chase her around the school all while docking points. Minerva ended up docking a total of 200 points. When she couldn't find her, Minerva removed the spell from the girl but promptly restored it with an irritated whisp when the girl would continue to badmouth Leta. Anyways, from 1927 to 1945, the global Wizarding War fueled by Gellert Grindelwald was raging, and throughout the war, Minerva stayed a true confidant of Albus Dumbledore. In the years following Grindelwald's rise and fall, Minerva had remained close with her former boss, Elphinstone, and he ended up proposing to her sometime between 1956 and 1980, but she still loved Dougal and declined. However, Elphinstone kept trying to propose over the years. During these years, Mcgonagall would rise to become head of the Transfiguration Department and later on head of Gryffindor House. From 1970 to 1981, the First Wizarding War was fought, and Minerva had a significant part to play in the fight against Voldemort. She was part of the Order of the Phoenix, an order created by Dumbledore with the sole purpose of fighting off and defeating Voldemort. Although in the Ministry's eyes, the order was a renegade outfit. Although Mcgonagall spent many nights spying for them in her Nemagus form, bringing the Aurors crucial information on the activities of Voldemort's followers. Although Professor Mcgonagall made it through the war without a scratch, she still suffered greatly at the hands of Voldemort. She lost her brother Robert, as well as 2 people whom she cared about deeply, Lily and James Potter. Furthermore, during a random anti-Muggle attack done by the Death Eaters, Dougal was murdered along with his wife and children. Over the years, Elphinstone had kept trying to propose to Minerva, and after the war was over, she eventually accepted his proposal in 1982. Elphinstone, who was now retired, bought a small cottage close to Hogwarts so that they could live there together. Unfortunately, Elphinstone was killed in 1985 by a venomous tentacular bite. After her husband's death, she couldn't bear to stay in the cottage and left to live at Hogwarts once again. In 1981, the boy Harry Potter was born, and when he unintentionally defeated the Dark Lord, Professor Mcgonagall would take part of the planning of his future as well as his protection. Although she could not hint to her that he'd be placed in care at his aunt and uncle's house, she did not hesitate to let everyone know that she was a big opposer of the idea. And so goes the story which which we already know. McGonagall would continue teaching at Hogwarts during Harry Potter's time at the school and would have a big part to play in the fight against Voldemort. In the final battle of Hogwarts, she even faced off against Voldemort himself, alongside Horace Slughorn and Kingsley Shacklebolt. Although they did not manage to kill Voldemort, neither side were hurt, which, when talking about a duel with Voldemort, is an achievement in itself. Professor Minerva McGonagall was truly a fierce witch and a force to be reckoned with. She was a skilled duelist, an animagus, and a true and loyal friend, and she was eventually immortalized as a chocolate frog card, and was also awarded the Order of Merlin's First Class. Following the defeat of Voldemort, she was promoted to headmistress of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Ultimately, Professor Minerva McGonagall earned recognition as a very successful and inspirational headmistress of the school, and when she took up permanent residence in Dumbledore's old quarters, her new study became the home to, among other things, a self-playing harp whose tones could often be heard around midday between classes. She also became part of a long line of headmasters and headmistresses that made use of the Hogwarts Pensieve, and who sought to contribute to the success of her eventual successors in office by adding to the invaluable library of reference at her disposal by leaving behind some of her own life experience in the form of memories. She continued being the headmistress of the school, at least until the school year of 2020 to 2021, but I mean, who can blame her? Perhaps she too got tired of COVID and decided to retire when COVID hit. Nonetheless, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to subscribe to the channel and check out the video on your screen right now. Until next time, may your magic shine brightly.